Hi guys, I'm the Ember, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a cool abstract / satisfying animation in Blender with geometry nodes. So let's jump straight into it. Don't worry if you're a beginner and you have never used geometry nodes before. I'm going to be going over what I'm doing and explaining what I'm doing. Okay, so I've opened up Blender. I'm just going to select the light and hit X to delete. Select the cube, and then I'm going to go over to this geometry nodes tab up the top. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and with the cube selected, I'll click new. This adds a new geometry nodes tree. So I'm just going to delete this group input, and Shift A, go down to volume and add volume to mesh. I'm also going to enable snapping over here, so it makes my work a bit neater. Okay, so I'm just going to connect the mesh output into the group output. Shift A, go back to volume and volume cube. And we're going to plug the volume cube into the volume of the volume to mesh. So you can see that we've got our cube back again. So now I'm going to add a texture to this. So I'm going to add a color ramp first. Whoops. A color ramp like this. And a wave texture. So I'm going to plug the color into the color ramp and the color of the color ramp into the volume cube's density socket. I'm going to change this to rings, the distortion to 1.3, detail to 15, detail scale to 13.2, detail roughness to 0.262, and the phase offset to 2.6. Okay, so we've got our pattern here. Kind of looks pretty weird, so I'm just going to adjust the color ramp a little bit. Bring these in. And now we need to animate this. So I'm just going to go down here and put my mouse in the corner of this window and click and drag up. This makes a new window. Now I'm going to select this over here and go to timeline. So now we've got the animation timeline. I'm going to change the scale of the wave texture to 0. Make sure you're at the start of the timeline. Hover over the scale and press I. This adds a keyframe. Now I'm going to go to the very end, which is 250, and change this to minus 1.5. And then hover over it and press I again. So you can see if we scrub along, we've got this animation. So you can also see that it starts pretty late. So it starts at like frame 35. So to fix that, I'm going to select the wave texture, select the first keyframes. I'm just going to go back to the start and drag these out till the animation starts. So just about here. So now if we press play, it starts like that. So that looks pretty good. I'm also going to add a set shade smooth. Plug that in here so that smooths it out a little bit. And a set material. In geometry nodes, you have to set the material through geometry nodes for the material to actually show up. So I'm just going to select the default material like that. Okay, so you can also see that it looks a little bit low poly. So I'm going to add one more modifier, and that will be a subdivision surface. Okay, so I'll set that to 2 in the render, and you can turn it on and off and see the difference. Okay, so now I'm going to go over to the shading tab and select our object. I'll view this up close. And I'm going to delete the principled BSDF and add a glass BSDF. And I'll plug that into the material output. So now I can see that this looks very glossy. So I'm going to add a color ramp. Whoops. And then a noise texture. And plug the factor of the noise texture into the factor of the color ramp. I'm going to make the scale 6.6 let's make the detail 15. Roughness, let's go 7.4. Let's go 0.74, not 7.4. And we can leave that at 2 and make the distortion 0.4. And then I'll just pull these in a little bit. Like this. Okay, so now I'm going to plug this into the IOR of the glass. And you can see that we've kind of got like this cool material. So I'm just going to select both of these, press Shift D to duplicate, move them down a little bit. And I'm going to change a few of these settings. So I'm going to make the scale 23. Detail can stay at that, that can stay like that, and make the distortion 0. So now we want them to be both mixed. So I'm going to add a mix color. And we can put the second color ramp into socket B. And I'm going to make this 0.35. So that looks pretty good. I'm also just going to make this color a little bit more blue. Like that. Okay, so now I'm just going to change some render settings. So I'm going to go to the camera icon up here and select cycles and GPU compute. I'm going to make the max samples for the viewport 32 and 164 samples for the final render. I'm also going to go down to color management and make this very high contrast. And you can see this is looking really cool. In the output settings, you can save this wherever you want to. So I'm going to click this icon here. And then you can go and save this wherever you want. And if you want to, you can make this an FFmpeg video. So when you render it, it's already a video. Okay, so I'm going to add some lighting now. I'm going to go back to the layout, select the camera. This already looks pretty good. I'm going to add a plane. And you can press RX90 and then RZ45. And then we can just move this down a little bit. ZZ to move it backwards, and then GZ to move it down. Rotate it a little bit by pressing RX, and then we can just scale this up, and you can adjust this till you have it in a position that you like. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. Now I'm just going to add a few lights. So Shift A, and we're going to go down to light and add an area. I'm going to move this above our object. And then we need to change some settings. I'll make this 2000 watts. Make the color a purple color. Like this. And make the shape a disc. And I'm going to make this 8.5. The size 8.5. So that makes it a lot bigger. And that's all good. I'm just going to go over to rendered view. And that's looking pretty great. I'm also going to go to the world settings and change that all the way down to black. Now I'm going to add a few more lights. So I'm going to select this light, Shift D to duplicate. And I'm just going to go to the top view and put this in a good position. Okay, so I've got this as sort of a backlight, and you can see that you can kind of see it on the plane. So I'm just going to move this further back and scale it up. And I'm going to make this second light a more bluey color and make it 1000. I'm going to go to top view again, Shift D, duplicate this another time. You can press R to rotate. Adjust this till you've got it in a position that you like. And I'm just going to change the color of this one to a pink. So now you can see that we've got a nice sort of rim light here. Now also just move it in a little bit. And you can just adjust this till you've got something that you like. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate this one more time. Shift D, move it to the side, rotate that a bit. And this is going to be the last light, don't worry. So we can adjust this one last time. And I'm going to make this 170. Like that. And also just move it in a bit more. Yeah, so this is just taking a lot of adjusting. So you might need to adjust with the strength of the light and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so this is in a good spot. I like it. Let's make that 200. Okay, so I might just adjust the camera a little bit. So I'm going to select the camera. To make adjusting this camera a bit easier, I'm going to go to constraints and add a constraint. And we're going to choose track to. And the target will be our main object. So now if you press G on the camera, you can see that it's always looking at our object. And then I'm just going to go to top view. And we can move the camera around a little bit. We're basically done, but this background is a little bit off, so I'll just change that. And I might also add a material to this background. So I'm just going to go back over to shading, select our background, make a new material, and let's call this BG. And I'm going to turn this darker and turn the roughness all the way up. We can go back to our layout, and you see this looks pretty good. It's a bit too dark, so I'll just turn that up. And you can give it a bit of a tint. Okay, so that is looking pretty good. Yeah, this looks pretty good. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. And now all we have to do to render this is go up to render and render animation. You can see here that we've got a bit of lighting that I don't really like. So I'm just going to cancel this. Go back to the very beginning. So we need to select that light that is making this blue here. So we're just going to select the lights and see which one has a blue color. So it's this one. And I'm just going to turn this size down to about, let's go 6. And you can also just adjust this camera if you've got some lighting you don't really like. You can press play and scrub along and see this actually looks pretty good. Just save this before you render, and then we can go render, render animation. So now this is rendering, and we're going to have a really cool animation when this is finished. Okay guys, so I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something. And if you want to see more of my content, please subscribe and give this video a like, and I will see you in the next one.